All right. Today we are going to be learning lesson 6.5, extension, reflecting points in the coordinate plane. Okay, our learning target is I can reflect points in the coordinate plane. All right, let's first talk about what is a reflection. Okay, so let's look at this bolded pink triangle. Okay, it's just a little bit darker than the other ones because that was our original triangle we started with. Okay, now we could reflect that triangle over this line, which would be our x-axis. And if we reflect it, it would kind of just flip down. So it looks the same here, and then farther away it looks the same and looks the same. So it's just getting kind of flipped down. Okay, it's getting reflected. Now let's look at if we were to flip it over our y-axis or this vertical line right here. It's kind of just getting flipped over. Notice how this point is right here, this point is back here, and then our top point is in the same spot, just flipped over into a different quadrant. Okay, so we're going to be taking this idea today to be reflecting points in the coordinate grid. Okay, so it looks like the triangle was flipped across the x and y axis. Okay, we call this reflecting. And we do it with coordinate points as well. Okay, so not only do we have to do that with pictures, we do that with coordinate plane as well. Things that you might have seen before in elementary school would be symmetry. Okay, so if you had to learn symmetry, for example, a heart is symmetrical. If we were to reflect this heart over onto, or this half of a heart over onto the other side, it would look like this. Hearts are symmetrical, meaning that they are reflections. One side is a reflection of the other side. Okay, so you might have seen symmetry before. Reflecting is almost the same thing. All right, let's learn how to reflect a point. All right, we're going to start off with reflecting with our x-axis. Our x-axis is our horizontal axis. Okay, the big thing here, and I want you to circle this, is that we keep the same x-coordinate and take the opposite of our y-coordinate. All right, that's great and dandy, but let's expand on that a little bit. Okay, so to reflect a point over the x-axis, let's just restate this. We use the same x-coordinate and take the opposite of the y-coordinate. Okay, let's put some meaning to those words by doing an example. So we're going to reflect the point 2, 3 over the x-axis. Our first step is to label both our x-axis and our y-axis. That's super important, especially when we're reflecting, because even if it's already labeled, we want to make it stand out. This is our x, that's our y. Okay, because that helps us know which line we are reflecting over. All right, we're reflecting over the x-axis, so I'm just going to kind of bold this line right here to know that that's the line that we're flipping it over. Okay. Our step 2 is going to be to plot our given point. The point that we were given here is 2, 3, so our x-coordinate is 2, x always comes first, and then our y-coordinate is 3, our y-coordinate always comes second. We're going to plot go over 2, up 3, that dot should go right about here. Okay. Now to do the reflection. It's going to be over this line, so we know our dot should be somewhere over here because it should be exactly there, just on the other side. We leave our x-coordinate the same, so our x-coordinate's 2, that stays the same. So I'm going to use a different color for this so we can see our reflection. Okay, and then we take, oh sorry, this is supposed to be the word the same. And then get the opposite of your y, since that is our rule. Okay, that we circled up here. That's our rule for the x-axis. So our x-coordinate's 2, so that stays the same. Our y-coordinate is 3, so we need to take the opposite of 3, which is -3. And our point should end up being at 2, -3. It should have just flipped over that x-axis, which it looks like it did. 1, 2, 3 units away, 1, 2, 3 units away, and it's on the same line. Okay, it's just reflected over that x-axis. Right, so notice that that point reflects over the x-axis. All right, let's take it one step further. We started in quadrant, so which quadrant is this? We started in quadrant 1 using Roman numerals or regular numbers, that's fine too. And reflected over the x-axis to which quadrant was our reflection in? That should be quadrant 4. Okay, and that's how we reflect points over the x-axis. Okay. Now when we do it over the y-axis, our rule is a little different. So now we're going over the y-axis. We take the same y, but now we have the opposite of x. So notice how that's the opposite of this. So here we kept the x, took the opposite of y. Here we keep the y, take the opposite of x. Now notice, when we're over the y-axis, the y stays the same. When we're over the x-axis, the x stays the same. So that's just a little mental trick you can use to help you remember which one's which. If we're doing it over the x-axis, x stays the same. If we're doing it over the y-axis, the y stays the same. Okay. Let's go through these steps. They're going to be fairly similar until we get to that last step. Okay, so to reflect a point over the y-axis, oops, it's in black so you can read it. You use the same y coordinate and take the opposite of the x coordinate. Okay. Example 1. Okay, we want to reflect 2, 3 over the y-axis. So our first step is to always, always, always label both our x-axis and y-axis. Even if they already are, make it stand out. Okay, so you do not make the silly mistake of accidentally reflecting it over the wrong axis. Okay, our step 2 is going to be plotting our given point, which is 2, 3. Okay, so I'm going to go over 2, up 3. Now we are reflecting over the y-axis this time, so it should be flipping over the y-axis. So our point should not be transferring down here, it should be flipping over the y. So we leave our y coordinate the same. Our y coordinate is 3, so that stays the same. And we take the opposite of the x. The opposite of 2 gives us -2. Okay, so we now have -2, +3. We always do left or right first, so -2, +3, our reflection should be, I want to do that in a different color, right there. Okay, notice how it just kind of flips over that y in the exact same spot. All right, that's a reflection over the y-axis. All right, now yes, that's very easy to do on a graph. I understand that. Okay, you just count how many out and it's going to be on the same line. All right, however, we also need to know how to do that without a graph. Okay, so notice that the point reflects over the y-axis. We started in quadrant, so this is where we started. We started in quadrant 1. Okay, we reflected over that y-axis to quadrant 2. Okay. Like I was saying before, we need to know how to do this without without a graph as well. Okay, so it's great and dandy that we could probably do this without using same x opposite y or same y opposite x, but we're not going to always have a graph. Okay, so we need to be able to know what is this reflection of this point going to be. Okay, so over the x-axis, the x stays the same. The y is the opposite. Okay, so for this x-axis reflection, 3 stays the same. The y becomes its opposite, which is -2. Okay, then it's basically the exact opposite for the y-axis. Okay, y-axis, the y stays the same. The x is the opposite. Okay, we always have to give it in a list of x comma y. Do another color so it stands out. So our y stays the same. Y is 2, so our y stays the same. Our x, we take the opposite, so the opposite of 3 is negative 3. Okay, now I want you to pause the video, try number 2 on your own, and then resume the video to check. All right, so if you are watching right now, that is because you should have already paused the video, and you should be resuming to check what your answers are for here. For the x-axis reflection, our x stays the same, which is negative 4, and our y is the opposite, which the opposite of 4 is negative 4. Remember, opposites are the same distance from 0. For our y-axis, it's a little different. Our y stays the same, so our y stays 4. And we take the opposite of our x, so the opposite of negative 4 is positive 4. And that's it. I would like you to write a summary today, okay, with just those 2 main rules. So what is our x-axis reflection rule for those coordinates, and what is our y-axis rule for those coordinates? Because that is something that we need to be able to remember. Okay, so write a quick summary that just describes those 2 rules that we learned. Okay, then you may get started on your classwork.